So there's an interesting thing happening in the dairy section of the grocery store. In fact, this significant change has been happening for the past 20 years, but has been so subtle that we've barely noticed.
All right, so I'm at the grocery store now, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what I mean.
The milk section is becoming incredibly diverse. You see milk made from cows, milk made from soy, milk made by almonds, milk made by cashews. You get the picture. We have a lot of different options when it comes to milk, which is great. Options are good.
There's one alternative milk that's kind of taken the market by storm. It's Oatly.
Move over, soy. There's a new trendy milk in town.
Oatly is a Swedish oat milk brand whose popularity has exploded across the United States.
And she's selling out of oat milk nearly every day.
It's like milk but made for humans.
So for the past 30 days, I've been drinking oat milk, and I can confidently say I'm never going back to any other type of milk. Oat milk, more particularly Oatly Milk, has changed my perception on the milk industry completely. And the significant change got me curious. Why is Oatly Milk so popular? For oats to even have a chance to enter our glasses, a series of events had to happen, and it all starts with cows. Without the dairy market, Oatly would have never been able to achieve its full potential. And it all starts with the rise and fall of the cow milk. But the start of the 20th century brought a normalization of milk. In 1930, the US government legally defined milk, and by 1970, the average American was drinking close to 30 gallons a year. But this is where it gets interesting. 1977, the US government released the dietary goals for the United States. In this document, section 12 specifically, they suggest reducing the overall fat consumption from 40 to 30%, and also substitute whole milk with non-fat milk. And that was the start of the slow decay of the overall milk consumption. By the 1990s, the dairy market was doing everything in their power to re-energize the milk industry. Even with the Got Milk campaigns, milk consumption was still dropping. And from the start of the 21st century all the way to 2015, the consumption has dropped from 23 gallons per person to 17 gallons per person. So that got me thinking. Obviously the environment is a big focus of the 21st century. So the next question I guess I have is, what is the impact that cow milk has on our planet? So to produce 1 glass of milk for an entire year, you need 650 square meters of land. That's equivalent of 2 tennis courts, not to mention the emissions that are released by cows and the water that's needed to keep the whole system going. So when you compare that to alternative milks like soy, almond, and oats, you notice that the amount of land they use, the amount of water they use, and emissions emitted is all significantly less than what a cow would use to produce 1 glass of milk. So when you compare the environmental impacts, the rise of veganism, and people being lactose intolerant, it's a perfect recipe for the fall of cow milk and the rise of alternative milks. So when it comes to alternative milks, and Oatly in particular, I have a really hard time believing that people are just buying them because it's good for the environment. You know, it's a good thought, and ultimately I do hope that one day we get to a point in society where all our decisions are based on our environment, but let's just face it, it's consumerism. That means that this must taste good in order for people to buy it. So let's look into that. So I came across this article by Harleen Ross, and she taste tested different oat milks. And even though this was a very opinion-based article, she did help me give criteria as to what makes Oatly for me really good, which is consistency, texture, taste, and smell. For me personally, Oatly milk does a really good job with consistency. So even before drinking it, it looks like real milk. And when you drink it, there's no separation of the oats and the water, which gives you that full experience, and it tricks your mind into thinking like, you know what, you're actually drinking real milk. When it comes to texture, overall, they do a phenomenal job. So before I even started drinking alternative milks, my biggest fear was when I would drink it, I would have that pulp in my mouth, and it would just be a very dissatisfying experience. Also, like going back to consistency, it's very thick. It's not as thick as like half and half milk, but somewhere in between just like normal milk and half milk. I think what wins out for me, and I think for everyone who does like Oatly, is the taste. So when you're drinking it, it just gives you that hint of sweetness. Lastly, the smell. So I'm not sure about you, but whenever I have dairy milk in my fridge and I open it up, I just get this whiff of like milk, cow milk smell that I just don't really like, and it's very repulsive. I can't be the only one that feels this way. So, you know, every time I open up Oatly milk and kind of smell it, it just doesn't smell like anything. It just smells like a little bit of oats, which honestly, it's a win, and it's not cow milk smell, so yeah. And I believe these are the 4 criteria that make oat milk so freaking popular. What's so interesting about Oatly Milk is that it's been around since 1990 and has gone through a few rebrands. And according to the CEO, Toni Petersson, their biggest factor in their success is, as I quote, "I think we're the only company in the world who really like in-depth nerd down on oats, liquid oats, for 25 years. Which might explain why when they launched in the US market, the popularity of the drink was so intense. there was incredible amounts of shortages that led to people buying the milk for insane prices, which inspired Oatly to literally create an Oatly Finder for their website. Even with the shortages, Oatly's popularity and their revenue was growing each and every year. It's safe to say Oatly Milk is here to stay. So for someone who's been drinking Oatly Milk for the last 30 days, I've come to two different conclusions. The first conclusion, my gut health. So back in 2012, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Crohn's disease. And essentially what that did was, anytime I would drink milk, I would just get these intense stomach pains that were unbearable. And they don't happen all the time, but it happened enough where I didn't really feel like drinking milk because I just didn't want to feel that pain. So oat milk was a huge relief for me because one, Oatly Milk best resembles, I think, milk and the textures and the way it feels when it goes down your mouth. And also it just tastes better and it makes me feel better about myself. And my gut, no stomach pains, which is a plus. Number two, I started realizing the impact I might be having with our environment. So interestingly, when I started drinking oat milk, I started calibrating my mind to recognizing that, hey, drinking oat milk is way better than cow milk because it's better for our environment. And recognizing that, I started asking myself other questions like, what else am I doing in my life that is hurting the environment and how can I improve? So oat milk in some weird, fun way kind of inspired me to ask better questions of how can I improve my actions to help with the overall health of our planet. So fun byproduct, it's productive, and honestly, it's small progress, but it's progress at the end of the day, which makes me really excited. So what's the future of milk? As of right now, the dairy industry is doing everything in their power to reclaim the term milk as solely as theirs to use. And even if FDA approves this and every alternative milk has to change their name to something else, I don't think it solves the big problem that the dairy industry does have. And ultimately, alternative milks already consist of 1/3 of the market share, and that number is going to keep going up. So I don't even know what they're trying to do, but I'll let them have their fun. And while the future of alternative milks is great, I think it also leads to more questions that we can't answer right now. For example, is Oatly going to be the one that wins out? Or is there going to be another brand that wins out? Or is the whole alternative milk industry just a big fad where you just jump from one milk to another milk and so on, and then you can post it on Instagram and say how woke you are? We just don't know. But I do know this. Drinking oat milk is amazing. It's just changed the way I kind of just like view milk, and it just tastes great. And as long as it tastes great, I'm gonna stick with it. And I think you should try it too. It might change your life. Just a thought.